The federal government is responding to criticism from U.S. lawmakers over Canada's lack of defense spending. Nearly 24 U.S. senators signed a bipartisan letter calling on Ottawa to spend 2% of GDP on defense by the end of the decade. Now, Canada says it's committed to reaching its NATO target, though that doesn't appear to jive with reality. Here are the numbers. Right now, Canada is nowhere close and actually falls near the bottom of that list. Mercedes Stephenson joins us now. So, Mercedes, you spoke with the U.S. ambassador about this. He really singled out Canada in that interview. What's been the government's response?
You know, Jeff, David Cohen is such a measured guy, and I have interviewed him as the American ambassador several times. And what he said to us on the West Block on Sunday was by far the most direct or critical I've ever heard him on defense spending. So it really jumped out at me. To say that Canada is the outlier in NATO, not an outlier, but the outlier, articulates a clear frustration from the Biden White House, not just over the lack of spending, but over the lack of how to even get to the 2%, despite claiming that's the goal. Now, the defense minister himself has described the military as entering a death spiral. But when I asked Bill Blair about this on his way into a House committee today and his reaction to the ambassador's comments, he insisted that he's not concerned about how this is affecting Canada's relationship with Washington.
That relationship is strong. We've been working with them for a very long time. They have every expectation that Canada will, as it always has, do its part.
Allies have been increasingly frustrated, though, Jeff, with Canada's inaction. In fact, I was speaking with a senior national security source who is in direct and regular contact with both Washington and London. And that source told me that our allies in those two capitals are, quote, resigned to the fact that the Trudeau government simply does not care about defense or security, and noted that countries like the UK and Australia have increased their defense spending substantially. The criticism also seems to be directed quite specifically at the Prime Minister and his senior staff, with multiple sources telling me that while Bill Blair does want to spend more, the bottleneck appears to be happening when things get to PMO.
All right. And Mercedes, this fresh criticism comes as Canada's military is in the midst of some pretty significant personnel changes at the very top. So how does that factor into all of this?
Yeah, sources are telling me the Canadian forces are experiencing a really chaotic time because while there is a chief of defense staff, that's Wayne Eyre, he's retiring and no new chief has been announced yet. That means, according to several sources, that senior generals and admirals are sort of surreptitiously conducting informal handovers before their change of command because no one's announced who is going where yet. And that's not only impacting the military operationally, which the chief of defense staff has said himself publicly, but it's also affecting many military families who don't know when or if or where they're going to be posted across the country because of that.
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thanks, Mercedes.